Well, that was wet, wasn't it? I'll tell you how wet it was getting into Donington last Sunday. One touring-car driver admitted, and I won't even avoid any embarrassment, on race morning in Loughborough, they managed to spin their road car at a roundabout when changing up from first to second gear. You know what? The Donington crew, the marshals and the officials bust their backsides big time in getting the track ready. So first off, considering the level of the water table and the incessant rain, which by my calculations started at 1 AM and didn't stop for a bit over 10 hours, which just poured down to the old hairpin and lay standing there and in other areas of the track, those folk did an excellent job in getting the track ready in incredibly difficult circumstances. I've been in this game for a long time, and it's very rare that I've seen a track in that kind of state, so a big up to them. As for those sitting at home on their phone, jabbering away, saying, you should just go racing. State of it. Fuck's sake, man. Anyway, I'm not going to go session by session, race by race, lap by lap, driver by driver. That's for other channels, and some of them do a cool job of it. The more decent YouTube channels covering the Btcc, the better I see. And this channel is here because of Touring Car magazine. This actual print magazine. Actual paper. It's a digital version too. Check it out. I'm pulling a couple of interesting stories and angles from last weekend out for this. I've got 4 quick interviews for good reason, and that is 1, Ingram, because he's the championship leader after the first round. 2, Huffy, because he's back in the UK full time. 3, DeLeon, because that was a bollock kicking performance. And 4, Scott Sumpton, to see a rookie take on things. There are a few other things to consider. Have the new hybrid rules made a difference? And in there, a little bit about hybrid power delivery that I didn't know about. It hasn't really been laid out for most fans. In qualifying, it worked, and it didn't work at the same time. First off, quick interview with Rob Huff. Former world champ was in good spirits after race 3, from not being allowed to take part in qualifying because his car was in the garage at the start of the session, through to starting race 3 on pole, but only finishing 6th. Spirits were up. First weekend back.
Yeah,
so
good fun.
It wasn't fun on Saturday afternoon, though, was it?
No, it wasn't. No. Where we started the week. I mean, I'm always disappointed. You know, I'm one of those people. If you're given the opportunity of pole position, I feel you should capitalise on it, and we didn't. But at the same time, I'm not going to be hard on myself because we didn't qualify. We started last in basically 2 races, and we had a 9th and a 6th, and I'm not disappointed with that. Purely on the basis that today's the most I've driven the car.
Yeah.
And all of these cars, you know, I've driven hundreds of touring cars, and they all have their little characters.
Yeah.
And you just have to understand that character.
Yeah.
It's the first time I've done any sort of more than 4 or 5 laps in a go in the car, and you know the character starts to come through on a lap 7 or 8 as the tyres start to dead down.
Was that a bit of a all mediums this weekend as well?
Yeah, all mediums this weekend.
So
I've done a bit on the soft, so I've not even tried the hard yet.
Yeah.
So you know, it's a lot to learn, especially, you know, and I'm not anyone who takes anything for granted. I know this championship is tough. I don't believe it's any tougher than anything I've done before.
Yeah.
The top level is the top level, and that goes for every championship I've ever raced in across the world.
Yeah.
These guys have been, you know, the top guys who've been doing it a long while. They know their cars inside out, and of course, I would expect them to capitalise on that for now.
Yeah. For now.
But give Huffy time, and he'll join the party.
But that race there, I mean, when you were in the leads, what was your thought process?
Well, I started to pull away, which was great, and we as I say, you learn the character of the car, and we've also found things with the car, I think, this weekend that we've maybe not, I've definitely not found before.
Yeah.
And ultimately you can't change those things, but you have to adapt. And I had 2 laps in the middle of the race there where I got overtaken by everyone I got overtaken by, where I literally, the brake pedal went a little bit long and I just didn't compensate for it. Yeah. And ultimately I paid a big price for that. Yeah. It literally put me wide off the apex by 1.5 meters, but the rail train came through, and you know, we all played fairly nicely, which was good. which is nice. It was good side-by-side racing. There was room on the inside, room on the outside, so that was good. You just got to learn it, and put it in the knowledge bank and build that knowledge bank and bring it to the next one.
And is this long term, short term? Because I bet that's what people are asking. Is this your last hurrah?
No. I'm here. I want to be here. I still feel, everywhere I go, I'm still quick at what I do, and I'm enjoying that while I've still got it. And I think, my plan is to do 4 or 5 years in Btcc to round off what has been a absolutely magical career.
There you go. And you have a few fans that have the impression that Rob is here for a year or two and a bit of a payday from his commercial package. But there is a long-term plan, and it's good to know that I'd be here to entertain us on and off the track for a few years to come. Now, qualifying though. When I watched the session back in YouTube at the hotel on the Saturday night, it looked great. But standing trackside for the final portion of qualifying, the final session, well, the final couple of sessions, it didn't. I know it's only the first run out, and the desired shake-up of the grid certainly worked in terms of what was intended to do. And there was a bit of weather-related help, but that wasn't a deciding factor. But, it was bitterly cold, and standing for, 10 minutes, effectively watching 6 cars warming the tyres up for a couple of runs, that was no fun. Quite a few fans I spoke to had that same thought. Sure, the hybrid might shake things up, but as was pointed out was by one fan I spoke to, when you've bought a Saturday ticket, you want to see a full session full of cars, fully going for it all the time. I can't argue with that. That's the paying public. I think the same myself if I was paying to get in. As for qualifying, a couple of drivers over in the Napa garage didn't quite get the communication that they wanted in terms of whether it was time to switch to wets or not, and it cost them big time. At the end of the day, it was the same familiar faces in the top few positions, but the star of the session was actually DeLeon, because the online chunder about the demise of Team Hard and its rebirth is unlimited, well, it passed fever pitch. But because they only completed a single lap at Major Day and they were very slow in FP1, that was all put aside when Darrell went 14th in FP2, then 9th in qualifying, and he held his own in the races. So first weekend, that was a hell of a qualifying, and how did that go for you?
Yeah, it was qualifying. We started the weekend really strong, to be honest, especially from where the car was at the start of FP1.
Yeah.
Really happy with Saturday, the qualifying. And then the races just struggled a little bit. Again, it's just dialing out a few issues. In that last race, we were actually really fast.
Yeah.
But I think a mix of me getting a bit excited, race 3, flat and sick hybrid and cold rear right just ruined my race 3. But It's all a learning curve. I'm kicking myself, but you got to take the positives from it. The cars looks really well. It's a team's first weekend, quite successful, I'd say. But yeah, it is a shame, but we're only going to push on from now. We know we've got the speed, so we've got to see.
And coming away from here, you must be really high and positive for the rest of the year.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, it's a bit annoying that last race, but yeah, very positive last race. Well, the start of it, because we saw how fast we were. I think they were saying like purple sectors or something, but or speeds. Not too sure, but yeah, I definitely felt really good in that last race.
DeLeon was a name that was on the radar this time last year as a talent to watch, well before his Btcc debut. And he's getting the ability really to show off his talent now. I mean, after talking to him at the Brands Hatch TCR round a few weeks ago, he said the team would make the show and would surprise a few people with the pace. I admit I was on the fence as to whether that would happen, and some people were mocking when I brought it up, but on the Saturday morning, the team toiled away. He was totally chipper, and I mean, yeah, the garage was sparse. In fact, the point where a couple of mechanics in a garage further down the pit lane referred to them as a works experience team. But their driver qualified behind DeLeon, so there you go. Sunday was a bit of a pisser weather-wise, and to be honest, on Saturday there was a bit of a muttering about the paddock being a bit flat. Not quite what it has been in the past because only 20 cars are there. Perhaps it was just the biting cold, and with the rain today on Sunday you'd have expected that attitude to have been compounded, but it wasn't. I must admit, I'm personally yet to be convinced in qualifying, but in free practice you couldn't really tell there was less cars. And it didn't seem the case during the races either, once they got going anyway. After having a nap at the track when I arrived in the car park, I headed to the pit lane to be met with a conference between Alan Gow, Tom Ingram, Ash Sutton and Ian Watson. They were heavily talking. The drivers had a lot to say. They were succinct, it was sanguine. The views of some of the others were sought, and the idea for an extra untimed practice came up, which is good for photographers like me anyway. There was a real desire to get going, but safely, and thankfully, when that finally got going, we had a corker of a day of racing across all categories. Those legends, man. Yeah. But as you all know, this year there's new tyres rules, but for this race the cars were all on medium tyres when they weren't on wets. All on new dry compounds. And I was speaking to a couple of people at one of the teams that they said they're a little bit off in pre-season because of the slight change in tyre behaviour with new construction. According to someone at Goodyear I spoke to, it's to do with government compliance rules over some of the chemicals being used in the tyres that were used up until the end of last season. That's being changed, hence the slight change in compound, and for some people a slightly noticeable change in car behaviour. I mean, there is new rules this year for tyres at other rounds. That's complicated, but they didn't apply at Donington, so I'm not going to that here. However though, the doubling of hybrid power, it isn't actually quite true from what I was told. But I'll tell you about that after these words from a driver who went fastest in both practice sessions, qualifying, won the first two races and got some fastest laps.
So to start off with a good weekend?
Yeah, great, really good. As a starting point, I don't think we can be too disappointed with how the weekend's gone with qualifying on pole, race 1 win and a fastest lap, race 2 win, and then a P4 with a fastest lap as well. With a car that's felt fantastic this weekend. It's really, really encouraging moving forward.
What was it like with a hybrid then? Now that you finally get a chance
Jesus, you really notice it now. I think my worry is everyone's going to get themselves, as we've seen so far, we're all going to get ourselves into some squabbles this year with the hybrid by sticking our noses in where we shouldn't, because of the overlap and the momentum that we have. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays itself out as the year goes through. Next race is going to be interesting, qualifying without the hybrid, considering the difference we can see it makes. So we'll all focus on making this thing go around the corners just as well as it has done this weekend.
Do you think that at Sea Brands it's going to be less of a negative effect than
No, I think it's going to be strong everywhere we go. I think this is just the start. When we go to places like Silverstone, it's going to be incredible. Yeah. Snetterton, places like that, we're going to really notice it.
So does it change your mentality in terms of the next?
Yes and no. I mean, we've obviously got to be aware that see you later. See you, Brad. That we've got to be thinking about it moving forwards because the deficit is going to be great, especially in qualifying. It's not going to be quite as great as other ballast and success ballast used to be, but it's certainly going to be noticeable difference. So we'll see how that plays out and go from there.
Fantastic.
Thank you, mate.
Hell of a Ingram weekend, eh? At the car launch earlier this season, Tom Chilton said he was faster in left-hand corners at Anglesey than Ingram, running because he's a bit heavier. He also said he thinks that Ingram and Sutton and Jan over in TCR World Tour are simply the best front-wheel drive tin-top racers in the world right now. So there you go. Ingram in a car that's on it. Yeah. As for hybrid, every driver I've spoken to says you can feel it. You can now really feel a kick in the back when the extra 60 horsepower kicks in. So is the hybrid making a difference? The thing is, you might know this already. A lot of fans don't. But when I spoke with a couple of engineers, I was surprised to find out that the engines this year are not as powerful as last year, and not all of the push-to-pass comes from the hybrid. Last year, the hybrid was delivered through electric and gave an extra 30 horsepower. Two engineers I spoke to told me it's roughly the same in 2024. The extra 30 that makes it 60 horsepower actually comes from a combination of turbo power and engine power, because the hybrid unit's only a small 48 volt thing, it can't really be pushed much more. But the engines have been turned down a couple of clicks, which equals to around 5 to 10 horsepower according to one of them. To avoid overstressing with the sudden delivery of extra power so often, that's there. But there's a worry from them that wear and tear from that could knock a couple of engines earlier in the life cycle than predicted. So there you go. Did you know that? If you did, clever. If not, yeah. At the Croft test, it was also explained to me that if a car exits the chicane with hybrid versus a teammate without hybrid, it should gain somewhere between 3 and 5 car lengths just along that straight down to Tower, meaning one car could theoretically just drive past the teammate without having to use an overtaking manoeuvre at the next corner, Tower corner. I don't know if that's true in a race condition, but we shall see. After race 2, I was chatting with Ash Sutton. He genuinely believed he had no chance at a podium due to the difference in hybrid between his car and the reverse grid cars, with much more that were ahead of him at the front of the grid. During race 2, the race at the front was between people with a similar amount of hybrid, hence why he could make a move on Jake Hill. But it went quite well across the weekend for the 2023 frontrunners. He also mentioned the possibility that some drivers might be drawn into thinking in some instances that the hybrid is bigger than they expect. So there might be drivers making moves that even with hybrids not quite possible. So because of that, it might get messy at times. Personally, I think after just one round, that'll be the same suspects heading the Brands Hatch finale with a shot at the title. It'll just be a different route there, a different way of racing to achieve a similar points position. At some point with a few rounds left, I expect someone will begin to play the numbers 1 and 3rds and 4ths consistently ahead of win and bust. And I expect teammates will come into play more than in the last few years. If Napa, WSR and Accelerate have drivers in the hunt with little hybrid and drivers with no title hope and lots of hybrid in different races, it might get a little bizarre at times, letting teammates through, just outlegging the teammates as rivals. We'll just have to wait and see. Now, the opening weekend, it isn't just about the big names. This is where the new drivers arrive and make the mark. And there's only one rookie this year, Scott Sumpton. I know Scott from 2 years in TCR UK and will be featuring his rookie journey in Touring Car magazine this year. He's kid canny, always good for a chat, and he's well up for it as well, as you can see here.
Call between the slicks and the wets.
Yeah.
We decided for the first qualifying to go for wets, and for the first 5 minutes we were sitting in P4, which I was really happy with. We were showing some really good pace, but then it was just when the track started drying out towards the end, it's too late for us to come onto the slick tyres, so we lost out there. But qualified 15th, so for the first ever British Touring Car qualifying session, cannot really complain with 15th. Yeah, Ian just said, just enjoy it, make sure you just get the weekend out of the way, learn as much as you can, don't do anything silly.
Yeah.
And it's just like some wise words of encouragement, really. Yeah. So yeah, it's good to get them from him, and I'm happy that I haven't gone to see him today. So hopefully I'll be in his good books. Yeah, no, really happy with how today went. Race 3 was very difficult. I was stuck behind Nick Househead for a little bit, but
he was quite wide at moments, wasn't he? Yeah,
he was. He made it very difficult for me to get past, but now I know what to expect moving into Brands Hatch. I know how the racing is, what drive, like certain drivers, how they attack the track and defend. So yeah, I've learned a lot, and I can't complain.
Over the testing.
So what Househead was doing, he was making the car really wide, which he'd done really well at, but he was stopping it on the apex, and then just going in a straight line, and I was just like,
you had no chance to catch that engine.
Chance. So I saved the hybrid for the last 3 laps. I believe he only had 1 lap left as well, what I got told on the radio, so I think we played that well to get past him. I used the hybrid at the end to the best of my ability. So yeah, really happy that we got a good understanding of the hybrid as well.
Told you, didn't I? Canny lad. The whole restart setup, man, it's excellent. Chris is really happy to be back in the Btcc too. You've got to give it to all of them for what they've achieved over the last couple of years and the last couple of months. The team's right on it, developing the car. It's going to get better. So then, right, there's a few bits and pieces from the pit paddock. Hope you enjoyed it. I'm working most of the Btcc and TCR UK around this season, so if you want to watch a few bits, including my recent vlog from Donington as a photographer, why not subscribe and like? so you can keep up with some of the stuff going on around touring car racing in the UK. Check out the magazine too. There's stuff in there that you will not find anywhere else. So then, it's lunchtime. I want bacon. I'm going to go and cook some bacon. It's cheaper than buying a bacon sandwich at the bloody racetrack.